Okay, now hear me out. I know it's hard to believe, but I do actually make music. I know in my free time I'm basically just going on Omegle or f***ing around on Fiverr, but I do in fact make music. And today we're gonna go and break down one of my recent releases called Over My Head. It came out on Excision's new label Subsidia. You might have heard it. It's the one that's all like, hey Ray, come with the tune. It's got heavy drops, it's got melodic drops, everything in between. And I thought I would show you a little peek under the hood and see what's going on. So let's just jump right in, huh? Taking just a quick look at this project, it's very organized, which honestly, my projects don't look like this. I did this just for the video. This is what my projects look like, and I know this is a train wreck. It looks like an apocalyptic disaster has hit. I'm sorry, don't even worry about it because now we have this. Starting the song off, I didn't want it to just hit on the one. I wanted to have a little bit of clearance before it, so I put this little VHS sample that I found online here. Oh, wow. Spicy. And as you hear instantly, you're taken into this euphoric pad progression that I put together with just some omnisphere layers here. We have this awesome panned one that I had to flatten down. And underneath that, we have this other main pad that's just kind of there to help give it some substance. Both of these are using some reverb and delay that's built in inside of Ableton, and they originally, this flat pan here, but you can see it on the main pad. I do have some reduced ambience, OTT, and Camel Crusher. I use OTT and Camel Crusher on everything. If you've watched my videos before, then you know this by now. It's just kind of my ultimate combo that I swear by. Reduced ambience is just there to act kind of like a gate, but not exactly, just literally reducing some minor ambience in the background that might have some random artifacts I can get rid of there. No EQing going on here, just a lot of leveling work, which is most of my mix downs, honestly. It's just all leveling here. The other main part of this intro, we have this awesome little filtered vocal chop, which is just me singing the main line over and over again. I do sing on this song. I sing on most of my songs, unless it's been specified that there's like a featured artist, or if it's an obvious sample from like a pack or something like that, it's usually me. And for this, I did use a little bit of Nectar and Little Altar Boy. Those are my two main go-tos for using any type of vocal processing, or doing any vocal processing, I should say. I decided to have a really low speed amount on here, which in turn makes it sound very auto-tuned, which is the vibe I was going for this. Anytime I do, I track vocals that are going to be higher pitched than my natural voice, I like to have them extra tuned because it's just kind of the style that I go for whenever I'm doing higher pitch stuff, and I think it sounds pretty nice. I also have Deformance boosted just slightly inside of Nectar, but if you look at the sample, it's actually pitched up 3 semitones. So the song is in D, and I actually recorded it in B. That's the note. I recorded it in B. We also have the OTT Camel Crusher situation going on again. I gave it a bandpass filter just for taste. I thought it sounded really nice instead of having it completely open in the beginning. That way nothing's being revealed too early and it has time for things to build, which is the whole point of, making a song. You're constantly building tension, building energy until it drops, and then you can go crazy from there. Layered under that, we have another part of the main hook that is just chopped slowly, which is the same situation going on with the Nectar and the Little Altar Boy, as well as the rest of the swag processing. But now we have it at a standard low pass with a little bit extra delay there. That way it's just kind of repetitive in the background on the offbeats, and it creates a nice kind of harmony for what else is going on with the vocal here. And moving on, we do get to the verse here, which is split into 2 different takes because there's just 2 separate lines there that go on. It's the same situation, except I do have a deplosive in here, which basically gets rid of any of the all that type of stuff. It's from Isotope. It's really good for getting rid of any of that because I don't have a pop filter. I just have a windscreen. I do have a pop filter. I just don't use it because it just looks kind of and I'd rather have aesthetic apparently than results. All the same processing is going into this though, as well as this take 2 here, and they just sound like this together. It sounds really nice, really pretty. Yeah. That's not good. Please, 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 please. Going into the hook, we do have some extra synths that come in. They're all Omnisphere. I use this thing every song I have, and I couldn't live without it. So I highly recommend it, absolutely. Under the main pad and that flattened one that we have this new whistle sound that's really pretty. Adding some type of harmony here against the normal rising, ascending melody. And we have that layered with another sound that's following the same progression there. That's just a plucky type of bell pad there. That's really pretty as well. And they all layer nicely with each other. this third one that comes in. And if you take a look, only a couple of these have processing on them. That main pad does, as well as the super saw type pad. The rest of them don't have anything on them. And like I said, no EQ, all just leveling. Hey, don't stop EQing so much, okay? Yes, it's fair to EQ things. Sometimes there's a harsh frequency that you gotta, boot the fuck out of there. But in general, I see a lot of people that are over EQing, taking out frequencies that they don't need to take out, and then they're creating holes in their mix, and they're creating pockets where there shouldn't be. And it can become an issue. So try to keep it simple if you can. That's what I like to do, at least. And before you say anything, I know, okay, well, you gotta cut off the low end because it doesn't clash with your sub. No shit, obviously. I have it in this main group called All of the Stuff. This group has everything, the synths, the basses, everything you could think of on there. And I have an EQ on there, a harsh cut at 100. I have my sidechain on there, everything that needs to be. From there, I have these subfolders that have the synths, the basses, etc. So everything's being cut off at 100, and then I have my own dedicated sub under it. That's the way that I like to personally do it. From there, we do get into the build, which is one of my favorite parts about the song, funny enough. I just really like the rhythm of it, and I really like the bounciness that it starts to provide and gets you ready for, like the main part of the drop. This is what it sounds like. There are a lot of little pieces at play here that come together. One of the main ones being the repetitive over my head vocal hit now. Having it there, having it be so repetitive brings catchiness. Repetition equals catchiness. Don't overdo it, but you need something there to have a motif and have something that's going to be there to catch the listener and be able to get something that they can sing along to or hum along to. We have that vocal paired up with this very quiet in the background, higher pitched one that's a little distorted with a little altar boy here. You can barely hear it if you listen closely. And it's just there to add a little bit of harmony, add a little bit more substance, and a little more spice, a little more flair, a little bit more finesse, I don't know, to the song. It just helps kind of build the build up a bit more. But I know that's not why you're here. You're there for the main stuff. You're here for the basses that are starting to grow in there, the drums in there. So that's exactly what I'll show you right now. I decided to keep that main pad instead of doing something like brass, like a lot of people do in their builds, just because I thought it would fit more for the emotional side of the track. Just something really, simple and to the point there. And then I decided on top of that to start bringing in that main bass, but have it be filtered out and have it slowly open up throughout the course of the build-up. That way it's building that energy, which is, like I said earlier, exactly what you're aiming to do when you're working on any type of song. So we have this in the back. And if you're wondering why it's frozen, there's a lot of clicks that OTT brings out, and you know how that goes. If you use a lot of OTT, you get those feedback noises and stuff. So here's the original sound here. Oh, okay, back into it. Before we actually look at the bass and potentially ruin everything again, I do want to show you the rest of the elements in this build-up. I found these two cool war horns. They sounded really cool. That's the only reason that they're in here. That's the only reason why I do anything. It's because it sounds cool. They just kind of sit nicely in the background. They're pretty present in the track, but if you look at the leveling here, they're both at, around -23 or so. No processing on them. All that's being done is on one of these. I have a transpose automation that's slowly pitching it up. That way it just kind of sounds like it's constantly building. And I wanted to keep the sub movement and the build up minimal as well, so I only have it playing alongside that first war horn as well as that main pad, so you only hear it just, which very fat sub. I know I use massive for my subs. I've went over this before, I think, but it's just a massive sine wave with some bright noise and feedback. Sine shaper. It's my secret recipe for fat as fuck subs, as well as some saturator here. I don't do any cutoff on it. I don't do any EQing on it. I just kind of leave it as is. That way it's really gritty. It adds a nice texture that I really like. I also have it sitting around -10 to compensate for the fact that it's so loud and heavy. The last main element of this build-up are the build-up drums, which I do have a loop in here, but otherwise it's just a bunch of snares and claps that I found that I'm pitching around with frequency shifter. Actually, funny enough, this is a hip-hop snare. It just sounds like this on its own, just But something I run into all the time, and this is actually a really good tip, is that you don't want to consolidate, you know, a whole ton of these and then do a pitch automation up, because if you ever want to change the sample, or if you want to change something about the pattern or something like that, you're kind of screwed because you have it as a consolidated file. But you don't have to do that when it comes to snares and hi-hats and stuff like that. You can use the fine tuning inside a frequency shifter. I use it all the time for doing emulating pitch bend like this, and all it does is, you know, it just fine tunes the frequency shift and it adds this nice pitch bend. So helps build things and keeps everything fully in my control if I want to change the sample or if I want to change the pattern or something like that. Under that, we have a cymatics loop. I don't know if I'm legally allowed to say their name, but yeah, just some claps and build. As well as another trap clap that I use for one of these trap step packs that I found, and I just have a nice little amount of reverb. Anytime I do trap stuff, I really like to have an interesting clap pattern where they're kind of bouncing back and forth between there. That way it's not too stagnant. And everything just sounds really nice once you add in the kicks. And it just kind of feels good. You just feel like you're about to have a good time, you know? You know, tell me that doesn't feel like, is that not a party? Is that not a party? Let me know. But now let's get into the secret sauce, the main part of this song that I'm sure you're here to watch about, which is the drop. I'm gonna unfreeze this and hopefully we don't crash this time. Okay, good. Now, if we're talking about this main bass, I'm gonna turn off everything and show you what it sounds like on its own. Now, I know you're thinking that sounds terrible, kind of sounds like a weird version of Save Me. It's actually the same sound from Save Me, but it sounds different because there's a lot of cool stuff going on here. Firstly, jumping into the actual Serum sound, we have 2 bits of analog wavetables. This is any type of basic shape you want to use. I don't even know why it cleared out. I didn't use a custom wavetable there. Serum's bugging on me. Just use any wavetable you want. Anything analog, it'll work. I also have a Juno wavetable on there as well. Like most of my sounds, we're doing some FM work, either from sync or bend. On this one, it's bend minus. We have some Combs filter going on here. This is what the LFO automation looks like. Just stuff to open up the bass in a nice way. Anytime you're doing sounds like this, when you're doing FM work, at least with analog wavetables, and you're getting these kind of squeakier sounds like I like to make, I always recommend that you offset the oscillator's octaves. So in this case, we have this one down at -3, and then the oscillator B, we're sitting around 0. And you guys can copy this patch if you want. You guys are welcome. Take the free sound. Just, you know, Venmo me for Chipotle, and we'll be even. A decent amount of effects going on here. Nothing that's too crazy or needed, like the flanger and the phaser don't really make too much of a difference. It's mainly in the built-in OTT here with the EQ, or the compressor I should say, and the EQ as well to give it some vowel. So as you're probably figuring out, most of this is coming from the post-processing, and a lot of it is Serum effects, which is just a Combs filter that I have automated on here. And the automation is what's actually giving it its new pitch. Because if I were to bypass this, you get something like this. Pretty similar, but adding this automation, adding this movement starts to change the way that it sounds. Really interesting, and you can get some different results here. Anytime I'm working on sounds, I do like to have the swag rack already on and in place. That way we're getting closer end result, and I can hear what it sounds like a little bit easier. So we have that on now, and you're already getting closer to what it sounds like. But it still sounds a little too high. To get around this, I put on a frequency shifter that is a high dry wet around 65% or so. And I just lowered that amount of frequency on there. That way it's not completely taking the entire sound away with that not being at 100 on the dry wet, but it's enough to get a difference. And it sounds really nice. And one of the last things on here that's important is the corpus. I've talked about this before, but corpus is absolutely vital to my production process, and without it, I'd probably be screwed. I know it's scary whenever you kind of jump into it because it's just like this high-pitched bell ringing in your ear. All you need to do is open up this tab here, link it to the bass like itself, so link it into itself, and then hit on frequency, and then bam, it's going to be in key with your sound. And then just lower that decay, that way it's not ringing forever, and change one of these beautiful little pieces here, and these will give you some different sounds that are going to be really cool, and it adds a little bit of width as well that sounds really nice. So this is what I end up working with here. And then added a little bit of kind of girth to it in a way, I guess you could say. And if we go over to what's being actually automated inside of this sound, it's mainly just the coarse pitch as well as the LFO rate. That's what's doing most of the work on this. I also went in to make sure that my MIDI was properly cut up. Sometimes your notes can be too long if you have an LFO rate that's too high or too short, you know, vice versa, whatever the situation might be. So it's a lot of just tinkering around and trying to find the sweet spots. And that's exactly what I did for a while, honestly, trying to get this pattern to be exactly what I wanted. And that's the LFO right there. And also the coarse pitch, which is just kind of switching around the main area, but then dipping down every other section. And then I know you're thinking, oh wait, it starts to pitch up though, but you don't really see that happening here. And that's all coming from the frequency shifter. Another great opportunity to get weird with your sounds and create some or emulate pitch bend in a fun way. So that's what I have here. I like doing things like this sometimes because it's unique and it's not just, you know, throwing a fucking pitch bend on there, and it's not just throwing, you know, coarse pitch and automating that on there, which I do all the time, but it just adds a little bit of a unique flavor to the song, and it sounds really nice if people catch the details. So that's something it's just something I like to do, you know, just something I like to do. Okay, hold on, I need a quick coldest water break real quick, huh? You know what I'm talking about. So for the longest time, this song stopped right after that first drop. It's all I ever had. Excision was playing it out that way. I had no second drop. I had no idea where it was gonna go. Until one day where I just randomly started kind of humming this melody, the doo 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 doo. Yeah, that little melody that you hear in the second drop. And I thought, okay, I'm gonna try to find a way to work this in. I knew I wanted to have an interesting kind of fake out happen here. So I did have that first bass from the first drop happen again, have it kind of repeat, start to kind of build, and then it randomly kind of hits you out of nowhere that it's gonna be a melodic drop. And to really sell it, I took a frequency shifter and I put it on that main bass there. That way it kind of just really helps signal, oh shit, something's about to go down, and it's not gonna be heavy. Which I don't know if you can actually hear it. If you listen closely, I have the main bass throughout the entire drop. It's just kind of repeating in the background here. And I have a pretty high low cut here at about 450 hertz or so. That way it's not invasive at all. It's just kind of sitting there in the background. But yeah, the main meat and potatoes of the drop here are coming from these synth and bass layers that help add up and fill up the whole drop, honestly. I think a lot of people miss out on this when they're working on melodic music. I think that there's a lot of really great melodic songs that don't have any low mids, and I think that it's important to still have it. Even if the song's not heavy, I think it's important to have something there that's gonna punch in the lows. That way you can really feel the emotion more. That's how I like to hear music, at least, and that's the way that I like to do it. So we have this little low boy here, which is just a Spire sound that has auto pan on the entire group, I should add, with the OTT Camel Crusher swag combo as well as this low bass here. All these are just Spire presets that I found that sounded really nice and complemented each other well. And they're sitting at 0, they're sitting pretty loud. And then we have the low super saw, which is just this. And this is actually the same sound I use for most of my main pads when I'm doing the heavy melodic dubstep, you know? That's usually the sound I use, but I wanted to only have the low octave there. That way it really stood out when I added the single pads layer by layer, and I thought it would do it a little bit differently that way, so it would just kind of sound a little bit more full. So we have these. It really helps fill up the whole room together, and something I was really happy with. They really just kind of complement each other well. And we have these 3 extra pads here that are the main melody that I was humming earlier that gave me the idea in the first place. And the first one's this. And that is just an Omnisphere sound that I found that has autopan from that group again, the OTT Camel Crusher swag rack. And we have it duplicated and layered with a different version. One of those more mainstream leads that you'll hear in like a Barely Alive track or something on Disciple. Just Electra X type of sound here that's really cool. And I was like, oh, this is perfect. This is kind of exactly what I'm looking for. And the last layer there is the really noisy, angry saw, because it's the same company actually, Tone 2. They make Gladiator, if you've heard of the generic angry saws preset. It's actually basically almost the same thing here. At least it's pretty close. I just have some OTT on there. I think I actually turned down some of the noise on this a little bit. I do some envelope work every now and then on these sounds just so that they fit it and it's not, the notes aren't overlapping if they have really long releases and stuff like that. So I'll make little alterations like that. Alterations, what the I can't speak English. But altogether, they form something really nice with this little square beep on the 3. It's literally just a square wave. I do this on most of my songs. It's kind of signature to me, which I really like, and it sounds like this. If we turn it off, there are still some other elements that are at play here. We have the second drop vocal overlay, which is just the repetitive "I'm in over my head" vocal hook, just sitting there in the background. It pitches up for the second half of that drop there, and then I have a little chop that you can very, very faintly hear if you listen closely when you're listening to the song. And I think little details like that are really nice, and if you go back and listen, you might be able to catch it. And it just adds a really nice, pretty kind of harmony that I really like. I don't know, I liked it, you know. But if we turn that off, we still have a pretty full spectrum to work with. And that's all coming from the awesome pitch bends in the sub on the second drop here, which is the same sub that I was talking about earlier. I'm using a macro to mess around with the pitch here because Massive doesn't have a pitch bend option like Serum does. So I just kind of linked that up and, you know, any type of cool little bends that sounded kind of fun to me. But it's complemented really nicely by these cymbals. I know you're thinking there's an EQ on there. I was talking shit about EQ. I know. I gotta do a little bit. I'm sorry, all right? I'm not perfect. I have a low cut on here around 500 or 600 hertz. That way we're making sure it's not being invasive with the low end here. And I'm actually just using my sample pack, which you can get on Splice right now. Yeah, for the crash and the open and closed hats. Just really simple stuff here. Nothing extra. Which I probably should talk about the drums now because everyone's gonna be like, dude, how do you process your drums? What kind of transient shaping you do? I don't do any of that. I just find any sample that sounds good to me and I leave it as is. The kick, sitting at +6 decibel. You think I'm fucking kidding? Look at that. Does that look like a joke? It's at 6 decibels over and it sounds fine. I don't know how it works, but it does. And then the second drop kick, that is actually a different kick here. Also sitting at 6 plus decibels. My kick is usually either at 0, 1, or 2 over. In this case, it's sitting at 6. I think I just ended up mixing this one pretty loud. I know you're thinking I'm a fucking maniac by doing this, but hey, there's no clipping there. It's in the red, but it's not actually audibly clipping. And we have a snare here that's sitting 2 over. And it's just one of my snares from my pack. Just sitting pretty. I have it pitched up 3 semitones. That way it was in key. And I have a little tail under it too. That's just kind of sitting in the background. Also from my pack on Splice right now. I don't know. I don't do a lot of transient shaping stuff. I honestly think I have only once in my life. I don't really focus on a lot of that stuff. I try to keep things as simple as I can. And I try not to overwork it because I like to have fun with what I'm doing, and if it sounds good, that's all that really matters. I think that there are really important lessons that you can take from stuff like transient shaping, and there's really good knowledge to be learned in that situation, but I don't really put any of that stuff into practice, so it's not stuff that I'm gonna kind of translate over to you guys because that's not how I work. But that's all that's really going on here. There's not too many channels in here. We're only around the, you know, the 75 to 80 mark, which I think some people might think that's a lot, but I have projects that are around 150 or 200 sometimes. There's a lot of little elements that are in here with these vocals, which I hope you guys like the little overview of how I process them. I can go in more in depth if you guys want. Let me know. I'll do it for another video. I don't know. Whatever you guys want. Leave your comments. You know, tell me how great I am, please. I need attention. That being said, thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, huh? Oh God, this is good stuff.